Okay, let's review the match play in Corrales Puntacana. Now, I think where I want to start is probably the Corrales Puntacana because the match play, it was pretty exciting. I won a bunch of money at the match play that I'd like to save to the end. Corrales Puntacana, like I said, I had a review, or I had a preview video for this if anyone was interested, and no one rose their hand to say, hey, I'm interested. So I didn't do one. However, I had a bucket system for it. And when we take a look at the bucket system, I do this in all my reviews. So if you are new, basically you look at this column, see how many successes I had. Green is good, Y means yes, red means no. There's a bunch of reds, but as you all know, the returning viewers, I have rules that go into projections. So here are my projection columns. You can see the minimum projection here in column H says 0.29. My rule is you always round down. So this becomes 0. Then in the max projection in column G, my rule is to always round up. So 0.48 would round up to 1. The other rule that goes with that is there's got to be a 2-point gap. And since we can't, there's got to be a 2-point gap. And if at all possible, you always bring the minimum projection down 1. Well, since you can't go any further down than 0, we have to bump our max projection up. So again, the normal projection was 0 to 1, and you always want a 2-point buffer. Prefer that you always bump down the minimum whenever you can. Can't in this scenario. 0 can't go down further than 0. So we bump up the max projection to 2. When you do that, you can see 2 golfers finish not only inside the top 10, but they also finished inside the optimal lineup. So this bucket was a success. One bucket that was not a success was the course history 6s. I had a projection between 1 to 3. 4 ended up being inside the top 10. 4 were in the optimal lineup. Therefore, it's not a success. And then last week 5s. This is your missed cuts. I also had a projection of 1 to 3. 6 were inside the top 10. 4 in the optimal lineup. That also, again, was not a success. So 2 buckets really failed when it came to looking at the bucket system for the Corrales Puntacana. Now, I put together a SweetSpot optimal that does follow the projections completely. And you can see that in this column here, the SweetSpot optimal, as I call it. So it does include 2, and that fits inside the projection here. Same applies over here in the other bucket that failed. So that works out. Now, the big thing is when we go and review the optimal versus the GPP versus the SweetSpot optimal is, does the SweetSpot optimal beat really just the GPP? That's the big one. And I did it from the $1 short game for the Corrales Puntacana. So just to give you a heads up, your optimal had Matt Wallace in it at 9,300, Nikolai Højgaard 88, Sam Stevens 79, Tyler Duncan 85, Austin Eckroat at 6,900, and then there was a tie between Ricky Barnes and Brent Grant. One was 6,300, one was 6,900. The optimal lineup salary up here that you see, that uses Brent Grant's $6,900. So $48,300. You had to leave $1,700 on the table to get to the optimal lineup. Again, impossible. There's no way. There's just, who cares? Your GPP winning lineup, use up all $50,000 of the salary. It included not the winner, by the way. So did not include Matt Wallace, but it included Nikolai Højgaard, 8K, Tyler Duncan, 8K, Wyndham Clark, which everyone was like, fade him because ownership fade him, 10,500. He was in the GPP winning lineup. Then we had $7,900 Sam Stevens, $7,400 Doug Gim, $6,900 Austin Eckroat. So that follows the 10,98776 model, but you replace a 9K with an 8K. Boom. That's how you get it. That's your GPP winning lineup. Now, optimal scored 696.5. GPP winning lineup scored 661. So really, our SweetSpot optimal needs to beat 661. And that included Matt Wallace, Nikolai Højgaard, Wyndham Clark, by the way, Ricky Barnes, Matthias Schwab, and Vincent Norman. I did this using the optimizer here. I'll throw it up on the screen. And it follows all of the conditions that go with it. Remember, it's a SweetSpot process. So it takes a look at the marquee tee times right here. I have that all written down, as you can see. So it chose 2 from the marquee tee times, where I have the minimum set at 2, the max at 4. I also limited how many AM PM golfers I could have, and it follows all the bucket conditionals that I have on here. And it came up with this lineup. Now I fibbed a little bit. It did include Martin Trainer with a couple different golfers, but that scored 1 more point than the one that I'm showing you. It didn't include Wyndham Clark. And I wanted a 10K golfer in my lineup. So obviously I chose the one that had Wyndham Clark. The SweetSpot Optimal scored 648.5 points, which means it does not beat the $1 GPP. Now, I have to say, Corrales Puntacana probably don't have enough data to really make the buckets effective. I don't have anything else other than that. Now, if I were to actually look at the marquee tee times that I had for this, we sorted out. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we sorted out like this. If I go and I look at every group, so 3 golfers in each group, what I want to see are either, I really want to see somewhere between 2 to 4 optimal lineup golfers, and really the only one that we see is Tyler Duncan. So you can see that right here, the little black tick mark that says optimal lineup. It's your optimal lineup golfer. Now, there were 2 golfers in the GP viewing lineup within the marquee tee times. And then, of course, I have the optimizers select at least 2 golfers in the marquee tee times. That was Wyndham Clark and Matthias Schwab. So, interesting. I mean, it kind of works out. We weren't winning a GPP. So that means the bucket system and the SweetSpot process did not work for the Corrales Puntacana, despite having 34 out of 36 buckets correct. So that's the review of the Corrales Puntacana. Reviewing the match play. Again, take a look at the column here. You want to see all successes, which you see a ton of Ys. Again, we're looking at our projections versus what was inside the top 10 and the optimal lineup. Now, top 10, by the way, that's a bit misleading, because when it comes to match play, just to show you the 2023 bracket, and I guess I don't have to show you this. If we go here and take a look, 1, 2, 3, 4 is determined based off of your championship game and your consolation game. Anyone who loses in the quarterfinals automatically gets 5th place, because that's the next placement after the placement before. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4. So then everybody who lost in the quarterfinals gets 5th place. Well, then there are 8 golfers there, so that means everyone in the Sweet 16 gets 9th place. Whoever loses, I should say, in the Sweet 16 gets 9th place. And then it divvies down for how many group wins that were in the group stage. So these are all golfers who did not get out of group stage. So as you can see, there were 16 golfers inside the top 10. So it's kind of misleading when we look at the bucket system and we take a look at top 10s. However, I do have it built in for the optimal lineup right here. So basically, if the top 10 number falls outside of the projection, so like you can see the very first bucket, the last year one, the projection was 0 to 1. Top 10, there was 1 golfer. But of course, then I also validate that with the optimal lineup, there's 1. Here's a good one. Last week did not plays. We had 13 of those 16 golfers inside the top 10. Only 4 were in the optimal lineup, and 5 were in the SweetSpot Optimal. Well, my projection was 3, round down this number to 6, because obviously you can't have more than 6 in your lineup. So the projection was 3 to 6. 4 were in the optimal, 5 were in the SweetSpot Optimal. Therefore, that bucket was successful. Remember, we were talking about the Corrales Puntacana when it came to projections. So 0 to 1. Remember, there always has to be a 2-point buffer. Well, 2 finished inside the top 10, 2 were in the optimal lineup, 2 in the SweetSpot Optimal, meaning that bucket was actually a success. And of course, formulas I don't have written in there. I probably could update that and make it change, but either way, I'm just showing you all the raw data, so you can do with it as you want, as you will. 36 out of 36 buckets were successful at the match play. Now, there weren't marquee tee times because we had the brackets, meaning we had to use a specific strategy. And of course, you could have followed that with the optimizer, which I obviously did. And I actually built the lineup that made $150. So let me see. I don't think there's really an easy way that I can do this. I'm not going to flash my DraftKings on here, but let me take a screenshot. There we go. Found it. Just to show you. Move that over here. That way I can get more. Perfect. Okay. Second place. It was interesting. I was watching the match play. I was watching Sunday, that first match. It was Rory versus Cam Young, and it was Scotty versus Sam Burns. And I didn't even see this lineup doing that great. But once, because you can see I have Burns and Young, once these two golfers won, I shot up the leaderboard. And then I started looking, like, because I was busy Sunday. I ended up looking back at my DraftKings and saw I was in 4th place. And I was like, oh my God, I've got Burns and Young. They're in the championship game. I'm going to win this. Nah, not so fast. The guy above me had the same 3 golfers, and he was already 3 points ahead of me. I knew I couldn't win. But when I looked at, I don't know if it was this 3rd place guy. I know it was the 6th place guy and maybe the 4th place guy. I can't remember exactly, but I'm like, we're going to beat them, because it was Cam Young and Rory McIlroy versus like Scotty Scheffler. And as long as McIlroy beat Scheffler, I knew I was going to take it down, or get 2nd place at least, but that's fine. First place paid out 200. I got 150 from the match play. I built this lineup, by the way, on the strategy video, the live video. If you go to the 1 hour 59 minute mark, you'll see it come across the screen. $10,000 Rory McIlroy, $9,200 Cam Young, $8,800 Sam Burns, $7,600 Kurt Kitayama, $7,500 Siwoo Kim, $6,300 JT Poston. All follows the bucket conditionals. All follow the match play strategy. So if you were following along last week and you saw some of those lineups, you certainly could have had, this one at your disposal, using it wherever you wanted to. I don't think it was going to take down the $5 GPP. I think that was like 920 points won that one. In fact, I do have it up. So looking at the optimal lineup, which scored 954 points, your GPP winning lineup scored 965. Okay, so I was wrong. It wasn't 920. But obviously you could have gotten there. The optimal lineup had Sam Burns at 88, $9,200 Cam Young, $11,000 Sky Scheffler, despite finishing in 4th place, because he scored nearly 20 more points than Rory McIlroy. And then it was Kurt Kitayama, Matt Kuchar, and Mackenzie Hughes. Weird how match play also has the 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6 as your optimal lineup. Weird. I mean, it's not weird to me, but hey, it's an easy rule to follow. That's pretty cool. Now your GPP winning lineup had Cam Young, Rory McIlroy, and Scotty Scheffler, so 2 10K golfers, and then a 9. Kurt Kitayama, Mackenzie Hughes, Matt Kuchar, and JJ Spawn, which we obviously talked about in the strategy video if you're following along with me. I thought JJ Spawn had a good chance to go through, and pretty damn close. So that used up all 50,000. Your optimal lineup left $100 on the table. It's kind of a bummer. I'm kind of glad to go out on a bang, getting $150 from that contest. My profit last week was $150, believe it or not. So that was wonderful. we just don't get to see match play until like Ryder Cup, which isn't the same, you know, because it won't have the pods, the group play. It won't have, you know, the additional 3 matches. So I'm kind of happy to get out, you know, with the winnings that I did, and move on from there. Now your Sweet Spot Optimal, by the way, scored 935.55. So that's following the entire Sweet Spot process using all the buckets. And because it was 36 out of 36 correct, the golfers, Sam Burns 88, Cam Young 92, Rory McIlroy 10.5, Kurt Kitayama at 76, $7,100 Matt Kuchar, $6,100 Mackenzie Hughes. So you're really swapping Scheffler for McIlroy to get to the Sweet Spot Optimal from the Optimal, and that would have scored enough to beat the GPP winning lineup. So it was a fun week. It was a great week. I enjoyed it, obviously, because of winning the money, but it was just great. You had first of all, McIlroy and Scheffler make it all the way there. All of them were number 1 seeds, by the way, in their groups. So yeah, it was great. I loved it. So that was the review of the match play as well as the Corral Punta Cana.